The biggest news in AI this week is the fact that Ilya Suskova has just raised a seed round for his startup SSI. We're going to be breaking down what the startup does, how much he raised, what they're planning on doing with it. Now, when you hear seed round, typically this could be anywhere from, these big companies with a big headliner like this, $10 million would be, wow, that's a great seed round. $50 million would be like, oh my gosh, that's an insane seed round. How much money did Ilya raise? The answer is $1 billion. For a seed round, this is astronomical. What's their product? What are they doing? That is a great question. Connor, what was, I guess, your first reaction when you saw that, he raised $1 billion as a seed round?
I mean, just the fear in venture capital. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that venture capital and AI has a strange relationship these days. I don't know exactly where it's going, but Ilya has started Safe Superintelligence, right? Is that what it's called? SSI, right? Safe Superintelligence. And, the investors are the big people, right? I mean, it's the who is it? It's Andreessen Horowitz. It's Sequoia Capital. It's everybody. But $1 billion is insane. But Jaden, I don't think that there's many organizations that are getting $1 billion. I think Ilya Suskova, and I think that any of these big folks leaving, an OpenAI or an Anthropic or something like that can do it because they just trust it's going to be about the team. And it is. Ilya Suskova, to remind everybody who this is, co-founder at OpenAI, used to be chief scientist at OpenAI, but really got himself in the headlines because he was kind of responsible in a way for ousting Sam Altman back in November. He's not on the board, but there were 3 board members that went to him and said, hey, Sam Altman is out of control. It's not safe anymore, et cetera, et cetera. And Suskova sided with them. So he was all of a sudden in the news. There's a big question out there. What did Ilya Suskova see back in November that made him think OpenAI was out of control? Now, I'm not sure. I think we've sort of shown that it wasn't anything in particular. But I think the most important thing here is that Ilya Suskova was huge in OpenAI, can raise as much money as he wants. In this case, we've seen it's $1 billion. He's taken Daniel Gross with him, who was doing Apple's AI and a few other people. But I think the really interesting thing to me, Gene, and I want your thoughts on this, is what's this going to be? What they've said is that they want to develop a big foundation model, if I understand correctly. And foundation model, we just mean, like the ChatGPTs of the world and the Claudes of the world, like these huge foundation models, which there are not many of because they cost billions to train. But they want to do one that's safe. And they've already said, Jaden, right off the top, that this may take 2 years of just, essentially building and red teaming and things like that before they have anything. So it's not only $1 billion, it's $1 billion and nothing for at least 2 years, right? That's the interesting point to me.
Yeah, no, I think this is super, super crazy. The thing that I think is really interesting for me that, I've been seeing this kind of meme floating around everywhere recently. And of course, we've all seen that what did Ilya see kind of meme when he kicked Sam out. And now everyone's like screenshotting this like $1 billion funding announcement. And they're like, what did Ilya see? And then it's like, oh, he saw $1 billion. And then another one that I've seen, which is kind of funny, is there's an interview where Sam Altman was saying like, with AI the way it is and the advancements that we're seeing with it, it's going to be possible for a one-man team to build, the next $1 billion unicorn company because, the AI will be able to create the software for it, yada, yada. And everyone's like, well, I guess he was right. Ilya was able to make $1 billion company. But,
10
all
people,
jokes
Jaden,
aside.
10 people apparently, yeah.
Yeah. All jokes aside, though, it's not just Ilya, but like it is a very small team. In case you're curious, it is 10 people on this team. So raising $1 billion at, I don't know what the exact valuation is. I don't think they've kind of let that slip. Let's just guess that, I don't know, whatever. I won't speculate. But $1 billion.
I heard 5, by the way. I think I heard 5 billion, but that was a guess.
Oh, okay, valuation. Yeah. I mean, it's got to be a pretty big chunk. I mean, when you're going out with a seed round, like you got to give a pretty good chunk, I think, for having nothing and just 10 team members. It's insane. The speculation I've heard is that they're going to be essentially putting 50% of that towards compute. So it's, it's not like it's all just going to be put towards development. It's about 500 million that's probably going to go just to buying the compute. So it's going to be very, very intense how this company is kind of put together from that end, I think.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it also, I mean, just as a economic story, it's fascinating to me, and especially here on AI Applied for all our friends out here. what does this mean too? Because on one hand, this is just sort of a blip. Ilya's building this thing. They've already said if it's going to be super safe, then they're not going to really be able to put out anything. So it's not like they've started this company and then, in 3 months, we're going to get this brand new shiny object that we can play with. It's not going to be like that. And so what does this mean for us, and why is this interesting? To me, it asks a couple of questions, right? Number one is, what's the future of AI and generative AI specifically? But are there going to be tons of these different models that you choose from? Is this going to be one of these things where, if you want the super safe car, that you're going to buy a Volvo, and if you want the super, amazing service in your hotel, you're going to the Four Seasons or you're going to the Ritz. Like, basically the best brands out there, and I'm coming from a business school, we talk about this stuff all the time, is, what does your brand represent, and what do you want to do? And I think, first of all, they're counting on that people are going to want a safe model, or they're counting on the fact that everything is going to go to everything's just going to start falling apart, and people are going to the flight to safety, which is huge. So on that point, Jaden, your thoughts on the future of AI, are there going to be a lot? And number two is, there is a competitor out there, and it's Anthropic. Anthropic built its name. Dario Amodei left OpenAI, and a bunch of other people did too, because they thought that OpenAI wasn't safe. They wanted to build safety. They have this constitutional system where, it's built on values. It's safety first. And in the beginning, Jaden, you remember you and I had this conversation probably 8 to 10 months ago, thinking what's this going to do? Everything's blowing by them. You'd really have to lower your standards. But now Anthropic has arguably the best model out there. I say arguably because it keeps changing. But they also have safety. So, okay, so two questions, Jaden. So first of all, what does this say to the future of AI? And second of all, can they compete with Anthropic, which is already doing this way better than anybody else, and they're already out there?
I mean, I would say don't count them out, because obviously this is one of the legends in the space. He's got brand name recognition. People trust him. So when you talk about building trust and safety, I don't think anyone has a better kind of story than he does. At the same time, this is immediately one of the most funded AI companies, period, right? Like, immediately he's in the, I don't know, top maybe 5, top 10 with just one funding round. I think maybe top 5. And so, yeah, and I would say don't discount that. At the same time, I do worry a little bit about some of these big funding round, feels like maybe a little bit flame out companies when they can't get the users they want. I think sort of like Inflection's Pi was a good example of that. I was recently listening to an interview of Reid Hoffman, who is one of the prominent investors in that, talk about kind of what happened. And what he said essentially was it didn't get the consumer adoption they wanted. And they were gonna, he's like, it's a great model, it's awesome, it's gonna make a lot of money, we're gonna switch it to a B2B kind of approach, but the team wanted to keep working on B2C, so we licensed it and we made a pivot and we did yada yada yada. Long story short, they also raised $1 billion and were unable to get the adoption. So I'm always you got a lot of money, so you probably could do something pretty cool. But the thing is, if you think Anthropic's their main competitor on the safe AI front, Anthropic is an amazing company today that has been around for years and years and years, and it's competing with OpenAI today. People are telling me it's slightly better, I'm using it for this and that, it's beating OpenAI on this and that. So it's if it's going to take them 2 years to get their model up and the safest, best model ready to compete with what we kind of think of Anthropic today, I just don't know at what point they're going to be able to leapfrog them in a significant enough way to start stealing people. Because in 2 years, I feel like the AI market is going to be way more established than it even is today. So, I mean, you always get competitors that can come in and make a big move, but that's kind of my big concern for them, is a flame out Inflection, or just not being able to compete, because Anthropic is going to, in 2 years, are going to be so much more ahead.
So much more ahead. So where do you, this is where I'm trying to figure out too. I can see the need and consumer desire for tons of different kinds of cars and everything, of course, right? But Inflection couldn't really survive. And for those of you who don't remember Inflection was supposed to be the super empathetic model, really well funded. I think it had a $4 billion valuation or something like that. Gates was funding it, as you said. Other huge investors, it was Mustafa Suleiman's organization. I think he started DeepMind. over in Google, and it was all signs pointed. This was one of maybe call it three or actually probably four giant foundation models, right? So you have OpenAI, Anthropic with Claude. You have obviously Google with Gemini. Microsoft Bing doesn't really count because it was mostly using OpenAI. And then you had Inflection. They were sort of like they were kind of the big four, right? I don't think I'm missing anybody. And when you think about it, Microsoft just ate Inflection. Inflection, as you said, couldn't even find a really great product market fit. I was kind of thinking of some things like, oh, well, maybe more in like healthcare. But everybody else out of the box, the GPT-4s, even when it came out of the box, it wasn't such a significant thing. And now OpenAI can afford to like burn tons of money and everything else. So yeah, so I guess I'm just wondering where this is going to go. Fascinated by it. This is going to be a fascinating story to continue to track for everybody else. Jaden, any last thoughts on this? Because this is really, I'm curious to see where this goes.
The last thing I want to say, two funny points. You have to go look at their website. It's SSI.inc. And it is hilarious. It is a plain white website with a little bit of text on it with a link to their routers. So like this is in no way this is a developed like some people might be like, oh well, maybe they have this secret sauce they've been working on or developing, or they bought some cool technology and have like kind of leg up. No. These guys their website is a plain text white thing that just says, hey, we raised $1 billion. Like
1998 internet. Yeah, right.
Yeah, this is Ilya walking into the Andreessen Horowitz A16Z headquarters and saying, look, I'm famous. I was at OpenAI. I want to start something. You got $1 billion for me? And I'm saying, yeah, sure. Like, I know how this was. There was no pitch deck. There was no background check. This just happened. And so I think this is interesting. The other point I wanted to bring up is they evidently are being backed. They're taking a big bet. But I think this does show that there is an appetite still for venture capital dollars to take some of these big swings, big bets on companies that they think are going to be huge. So I think that that's very interesting. And the last thing is, you mentioned Gross, he came over with them and he'd been doing some stuff at Apple and other places before. He did an interview recently and he, just talking about the timeline and how long this thing is going to be under development, said, quote, "It's important for us to be surrounded by investors who understand, respect, and support our mission, which is to make a straight shot to safe superintelligence, and in particular to spend a couple of years doing R&D on our product before bringing it to market." So, I mean, you heard it straight from them. This is not coming anytime soon. This is $1 billion that in a few years is going to go somewhere. They're smart guys. They have a lot of money, so I think they can do something cool. But I have seen other smart guys, a lot of money, not succeed. So I hope they succeed, but this is far from a sure bet, I would say, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm very curious because it might just fall from the news very quickly. So let's enjoy it while we can. Listen, if you enjoyed the podcast, or if you just think Jade and I are good family men who are just trying to make our way in the world, and you want to give us sort of a little bit of a boost this weekend or this week, leaving a rating and review is the absolute best way to do that. I can't tell you how much we appreciate that. You guys are the best. Thank you for tuning in to AI Applied, and have an amazing rest of your day.
And the last thing I'll say, just a little cherry on top, if you haven't got Connor's AI course set, you need to check it out. It will change your life and the way you interact with AI. It's amazing. Hundreds of people have left it rave reviews. So I'll drop a link in the description to that as well. But yeah, hope you guys all have an amazing rest of your day.